Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing okay. Unfortunately, our Mets haven't been doing so well. It's been a lot of me throwing balls of water at the TV, so it's reached that point of the season.
Yeah, as me and you have discussed frequently this year so far, unfortunately, we're kind of hoping that our Mets are doing the reverse of what they've done the last couple of years, where they've started off really good and then finished really bad. Well, let's just hope they're starting off really bad and finishing really good this year. That would be a nice change of pace if that's to come. But we got plenty of time to get into the Mets. We'll be getting into them a little bit later on. We got a lot of stuff to get into today. Right off the bat, Dan, they had this whole controversy that we're going to get into in a little bit with Judge supposedly, maybe cheating a little bit, trying to gain a little bit of an advantage down there, up there in Toronto. Obviously the whole Mets situation, the Mets bringing back Vientos today. The Knicks were eliminated, and the NFL schedule release was out last week. So we'll be touching on a little bit of all this right now. But, Dan, I think we both agree that we're going to be getting it started with the New York Knicks dropping Game 6 in Miami, 96-92. It was a tight game. The Knicks at one point led 31-17, and it looked like we were going to be seeing our first Game 6 for the New York Knicks, the first Game 7 for the New York Knicks in over 20 years. It would have been the first Game 7 at Madison Square Garden for the Knicks since 1995 against the Pacers. So what's your reaction, Dan? We've had a little while to digest this since they lost. How are you feeling a week out now?
I was disappointed big time, all right? Freaking Butler with shades of losing to Jordan every year in the playoffs in the 90s. I had to go and say to some people I just made a joke with some people on Twitter, because there's some people that I can tell kind of maybe don't remember the 90s on Twitter. So I said, let me tell you about old year in 1994. We were one win away from winning it all.
One finger roll from Patrick Ewing.
Yeah, exactly. We were that close, and you want to talk about disappointment, and that was disappointment. You haven't seen all the years of disappointment we've seen in the playoffs.
Exactly. It was a nice little run. It was fun, and you know what? As a long-suffering Knicks fan, like I am, like you are, you know what? This isn't the end goal that we want. We don't want to, make our season the goal to be losing in the second round to a number 8 seed, which hurts even more, to be honest. As good as we both know the Heat are, that team is loaded with killers. They have one of the best coach, if not the best coach in basketball right now, Spoelstra. Jimmy Butler's money, Bam Adebayo. One thing I have to say about Bam Adebayo is that guy is dangerous. How many Knicks ankles did that guy injure throughout this 6-game series? So I don't know. I like Bam Adebayo as a player. I would like him on my team, but I do view him as a little bit dirty after this series. You have to just tip your cap to guys like Jimmy Butler and this Miami Heat team as they continue this improbable run So what do you think, Dan? Where do we go from here? Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. Before we even do that, we have to address this man right here because this guy, Mr. Jalen Brunson, as we can see, let me get this thing out here real quick. You can see that Jalen Brunson was just money, specifically in that game 6. The guy was just undeniable. 45 minutes played, 41 points. You just couldn't stop him. Dan, what's your reaction about Jalen Brunson? I mean, we knew this guy was really good, but I think with his performances specifically in games 5 and 6 in the series, not that he wasn't amazing for the rest of the series and the playoffs to begin with, but I think his performances in game 5 and 6 show that not only do we have a star in Jalen Brunson, the Knicks have a superstar.
I feel confident moving on into the future with this guy. Like, I feel like we finally have that superstar we could build around. We finally got a superstar point that actually wants to play for us, and that's been always a hard time the last couple of years. You all know the history. I mean, I'm still reminded of the letdown with the fact that the Lakers are still in the front are in the Western Conference Finals. Every time I see LeBron James, it makes me remember that disappointment. Remember we were all excited about LeBron coming here.
Oh yeah, yep, the summer of 2010.
Yeah, every time I see his face on TV, it just brings back painful memories of one of the most disappointing days in the history of the New York Knicks. So many Knicks fans were excited about that. I even heard something that not many there was something that was revealed that not many people know about the whole effort to try to get LeBron to come to the Knicks. One of the things the Knicks did, they somehow got James Gandolfini to film a video reprising his role of Tony Soprano in an effort to get him to come here. Apparently.
That's a hell of a pitch. Got to give it to the Knicks for creativity on that. Unfortunately, it didn't get LeBron. Like you said, he's still going strong in the Western Conference Finals against the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets are looking pretty good right now. In the Eastern. Yeah.
And I could say I'm losing. I'm really rooting for the Lakers to lose.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that, man. I'm going for Denver. You really have to love what this guy Jokic is doing out there, right? He is just, this kid. Last night, actually, in their game 1 win over the Lakers, he went out there and he became the first player in 25 years to have at least 10 rebounds, and he had 12, and at least 5 assists in 1 quarter. He did that in the first quarter, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, en route to just a dominating performance. Great victory in game 1 for the Nuggets. So you got to give that to them. Look, there really aren't any, heavy. There's still a lot of good teams left. Probably the Nuggets are probably the best one regular season wise. But man, don't sleep on any of these guys. The Lakers, especially with LeBron, can come out and get you at any time. The Nuggets are a deep team. Boston is a very, very good team too, no doubt about it. And you can never sleep on the Heat, as we just saw. So, Dan, real quick, do you if you had to pick one team of the Final Four to be standing tall at the very end, who do you think is going to be the last man standing?
Oh, a lot of people in Boston are going to be happy about this because I'm just going to going into this. I'm going to predict the Celtics winning it all.
Hey, not a crazy prediction, my friend. Not a crazy prediction. So, when you look at that, I think the finals that the NBA wants, although you can never dismiss the LeBron intrigue factor, but if you want to say that everybody is still kind of fatigued at this point from LeBron, I mean, a Denver-Boston NBA final would be absolutely huge for the league there too. You pull in a lot of the West Coast, you pull in a lot of the East Coast. Two teams, there's probably more intrigue around Boston because Denver kind of flies under the radar there, but definitely a very, very good matchup if that was to happen, right?
Yeah, that one. I also can't discount the fact that if they don't like the Lakers, they're the NBA probably also loves the idea just because of the historical rivalry, the Celtics Lakers. That's a historic rivalry. If you've seen all those highlights in the '80s and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right, man. You're absolutely right. Definitely a big, big intrigue there. So just to focus on our Knicks now, just to wrap this little bit up about them. Dan, this Knick team was picked coming into this season to win about 37, 38 games. They overperformed that by about 10. Thibodeau had them, I forget what their exact record was, 47 and 35, I think I want to say, right around there. Thibodeau had them as a really good team. You win 47 games any year in the NBA, you're doing a pretty damn good job. So, got to tip your cap to Tibbs there. Got to tip your cap to the rest of the team. The bench and everything played great. Brunson, obviously, is a man amongst boys. But if you were going to make a choice, what this team should do going forward, I think we really saw that, man, if in Game 6, if either Julius Randle or R.J. Barrett stepped up the way Jalen Brunson did, then there's a very good chance the Knicks could still be playing right now. I think one of those guys has to go. As disappointed as I was with RJ at times, I think the guy that has to go has to be Julius Randle. Um, I don't know. How do you feel about that, Dan?
I kind of feel the same way. Julius Randle's one that has to go.
And is there anybody that catches your interest? Like, I know the NBA. You never know what's going to happen. Tomorrow one of the biggest stars in the league can demand a trade, and then everything changes. But if you had to look at the league right now, is there anybody that you kind of have your eye on that you hope that, even if it doesn't seem likely right now, maybe the Knicks can get their hands on this offseason?
I don't. This is like one of the weird off seasons because I don't really see anything that's gonna really like raise our eyebrows when potential anyone that could be moving teams this year.
Yeah, well, and you're right, because I don't think that big free agent that we always talk about. Everybody always wants that big fish, that big free agent. Uh, I don't think that guy is there this year. But when you do look at it, I think that there might be a couple of trades to be had, and like I said, in the NBA, you never know. But I do think that that things are pointing in the right direction. The Knicks have the ability to make a trade, because one thing we can't forget too is there's going to be guys we're not thinking of. There's going to be guys that have contract disputes or disputes with management, or they don't like their coach, or they don't like their team. You know what I mean? There's always something going on, and in really any of these sports. But for some reason, the NBA, star players moving seems more prevalent than in the other sports. But I think right now. Well, let me ask you this question as we about to wrap this up. Coming out of this season now, with everything we've seen from the last couple of years, with all the assets the Knicks have acquired, do you right now, the Knicks GM Leon Rose has had a couple of years to lay his groundwork. From what we've seen, do you trust Leon Rose going forward?
Going forward, I trust Ian Rose going forward.
Yeah, I think his resume speaks for itself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, because we have to remember too, Knicks fans, we might be impatient at times, but remember the mess that Leon Rose inherited when he got here, man? I mean, there really wasn't much that you could look at and be proud of this, not only the Knicks roster, but everything surrounding it, from the coaching, from the way it was perceived around the league. And right now, even though the Knicks, maybe they're not at that level of respect that those 90s Knicks had from the way they were run and perceived, I think that's starting to change right now, right?
Yeah, I feel like this is starting to change, and we're finally gonna get that. I feel we're gonna get that yearly being contenders again, finally.
Exactly. And that's where you want to be. That's the name of the game right now for the Knicks. So, okay, it sucks. We lost this game 6 to a veteran, well coached Miami team, and now you just got to hope they pick up the pieces and move on. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing right now, Dennis. We're going to be moving on now. We're going to be continuing on, and we're going to be doing a little bouncing back and forth. We like to keep our baseball together. We do Mets and the Yankees together a lot, but you know what? I do want to pair this beginning with another interesting storyline that we were talking about. So, Dan, the last couple of days, I don't know if you've been seeing, but again, the guy is tearing it up. He hit 2 home runs the other night against the Blue Jays to get started. Then he hit another bomb last night to keep it going. That was another late home run that put the Yankees ahead. They ended up winning the game 6-3. And we're starting to get whispers. It started on the Blue Jays broadcast that Judge was looking into the Yankee dugout. Now, here is the image that has been circulating. And let's see if I can enhance this a little bit for our viewers. That is what they're saying Judge was doing. Okay, if you look at his eyes right there, what they're saying Judge is doing is that he's looking into the dugout, and I guess the Yankees are relaying signs to him. I don't know, Dan. I'm no fan of the Yankees, and I do think that the Yankees did some cheating before the Astros in 2015 with Carlos Beltran. A lot of people don't want to talk about that, but I do think that's true. But I don't really see any issue with this. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I don't see anything that looks like there's anything that's cheating, and if there is, it should be their shame on them, because all I keep hearing from every Yankee fan, they keep bitching about the Astros cheating, and that would really, that would be a real letdown if we, like, Yankee fans, all of a sudden their team is cheating, but all of a sudden they were the ones bitching about the Astros cheating.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that, to be honest, like, look, Beltran was the guy that took one of the biggest hits for the 2017 Astros. He even lost his Mets managing gig because of that, which had nothing to do with it. But let's remember things for a second here. He shows up with the Yankees suddenly. A-Rod comes back that year. A-Rod goes crazy. Teixeira has a great year. And those guys had garbage years for the previous years before that. The Yankees suddenly have a fantastic year, make the playoffs for the first time since 2012. I don't think it's a coincidence. And there have been whispers about this since well before I'm stating this right now on the show, and even before the Astros scandal. So, it's typical Yankee fans to be throwing mud all over the Astros for whatever they did, which, by the way, wasn't right. Banging the trash cans and all that shit. The Astros might have taken it to another level, but let's be honest here. I think the Yankees were cheating. I think the Astros were cheating. I think the Red Sox were cheating during that Alex Cora in that era when they won the World Series in 2018. And I think a lot of teams were cheating, to be honest. And I just don't think that especially in that era, fans and media, I guess, or maybe the media to a lesser extent, weren't really aware of this, right? I mean, look, if to be honest, if that many players and that many
Yeah,
teams are doing it,
exactly.
everybody's guilty, right?
Yeah, I think there was a lot more people cheating than we actually think were cheating. And the only reason people are all over the Astros about it is because somehow that information got leaked.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Thanks to I forget what the pitcher's name was, but the pitcher that used to play for the Oakland Athletics, and he ended up pitching for the Houston Astros during that championship year. I don't know why I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he's the one that kind of outed it. But like I said, I don't think that the Astros were the only ones doing it. And to be honest, if we're going to get back to this Judge thing here and not get sidetracked by the whole cheating discussion, I look, the guys, how many times have we seen really, really good ball players, like Hall of Fame level ball players, um, lose, or I'm sorry, not lose, but look back and try to see the signs. That's what it seemed like he was doing to me. He seemed like he was doing the type of, if you want to call it cheating, quote unquote, that players have been doing in baseball for over 100 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. They weren't really stealing. They were just stealing signs. They weren't on anything like using anything. They just somehow picked up on the signs and used it to their advantage. It's not like they were doing what supposedly the Astros were doing with their video feeds and banging trash cans. They were legitimately pick up on the other team's signs and use that to their advantage. So, and I do have a lot. I have some friends in the Toronto area, but I'm sorry, Aaron Judge was probably not cheating.
Yeah, he's probably not. I mean, look, the guy hit 62 home runs last year. He's one of the best power hitters in baseball. Um, I don't think that Judge has to cheat to hit home runs in the first place, and I don't think that he was doing it last night. You know, and by the way, too, I don't know what Judge was looking at. Maybe he was looking at the catcher. Maybe he was looking at the dugout. It's a chance he was looking at the dugout, but just the fact that he was looking at the dugout doesn't mean the guys in the dugout were doing anything nefarious to get the signs. You know what I mean? Even the Blue Jays pitcher said that afterwards he was aware he was tipping his pitches. So maybe it's just the fact that he was tipping his pitches so clearly on the mound that somebody in the Yankees dugout picked up on it and was trying to relay that information to Aaron Judge in real time, which, by the way, people, has been happening in baseball for 150 years.
Yeah, exactly. What my co-host said. This has been happening. This has been happening for as long as there's baseball, and for as long as there's baseball, this is going to be happening. And get over it. And this is in Canada that they're complaining about this. Do I need to say this in French as well? Because I don't know how to say it in French.
Well, Dan, you know what? I think you hit the nail on the head with the "Get Over It," though, and I think there's a little song that goes with that. Get over it when you're crying, you're whining, you're pitching a fit. Get over it. Now that's a throwback.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the thing to me, what I said about it, having to say it in French, is that I've known enough people who have been to Canada that have heard various like things on plane announcements and stuff being said in English and in French. And plus,
Exactly.
I know some people who have seen the Mets on the road in Montreal, and they told me that the PA announcements were in English and in French.
Yeah, you're right. They were in French. I didn't actually get to Montreal. I always wanted to go, but never had the opportunity. It was just a little too young. But yeah. So okay. So yeah, let's move on from the Judge thing. I think it's pretty clear that we both don't really have a problem with it. But
there is something we do have a problem with, and that's our Mets continuing to stink. Mets lost last night 8-5 to the Rays. Justin Verlander got lit up and got booed off the mound. We were kind of hoping that maybe last night, a great start from Verlander would kind of spur the Mets on and get the good vibes going again with this team. Just didn't happen yet. They face the Rays again tonight with Senga on the mound, so maybe Senga can get the ball rolling like that, kind of. But just really, really not good vibes going on with the Mets right now, Dan. How are you feeling about about our baseball team right now?
I just feel like it's a lot of letdown. It's a lot of agita. This whole first quarter of the season, and then of all the days Justin Verlander had his worst start of the season, it had to be today at a game we needed to try to make a statement and win. And also, I just hope for the sake of Justin Verlander, maybe to avoid. Hope I don't think he was distracted, but maybe he might need to advise his wife not to look so distracting in the stands when he's pitching.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. But you know what though? I'm sorry. Continue.
Because I remember my mother. I don't know. My mom watched TNT sometimes. I used to sometimes catch a glimpse, and they'd be the way they would comment on Kate Upton back in the day. You know what I mean, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the sound effect they would use. So it's like, hopefully he wasn't distracted because I have to admit, if I was in Verlander's shoes, I'd have a tough time not being distracted on the mound.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, man. You're absolutely right. And especially when you've got a wife like Kate Upton in the stands too. It could be a little distracting, and you got a lot of stuff with this Mets team can be distracting right now. I mean, between the fact that Verlander and Scherzer just can't stay in the rotation at the same time, the bullpen can look scary at times. We see how thin this pen can be when everybody's pushed up because of the absence of Edwin Diaz. And we also see how light this this Mets lineup can be at times too. When they're all clicking, specifically Alonso Lindor, this lineup can go up there with some of the best in baseball. But man, I mean, you know, they just seem to they're missing a bat or maybe even two in this lineup. You're getting a lot out of Nimmo. Um, you know, Lindor is having a weird year so far, but at least he's driving in runs. Alonso started off like a house of fire. He's cooled off the last week or two, but still leads the major leagues in home runs. So he's still doing what you're paying him to do. Um, I don't know, Dan. Who are you looking at on this Mets roster? What what guy in this lineup do you think right now isn't pulling his weight?
I just feel like it may have been a mistake bringing in the Vogel back. The guy
Mm-hmm.
just seems like a slow bat. I mean, it's like it's one thing if he's hitting like for power, so like I'm gonna use David Ortiz as an example, like probably the high standard for DHs, but the Vogelback's just getting these little base hits and his speed, he's only really getting singles and it's not really much use. There's even been times we've had to pinch run for him a lot.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, you're
really
right.
becoming a liability on this team. Also, I do gotta applaud them for finally bringing up Mark Viennos. The guy was just asking to be called up the way he was playing. He's earning it. I feel like Mauricio they might be reluctant to call him up because Mauricio might be trade bait. I feel like could be
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
could be maybe the piece that gets us maybe a player of Otani or at least a very decent pitcher that's gonna get us the wins we need to get over that hump. So I feel like that's gonna play a factor going into the season. So Mauricio might be here question mark if he gets called up, being the fact he might be state bait. And I specifically think that they're going to be going after pitching is going to be the big game, especially during the second half. It's going to come down to pitching. So they feel like we're going to get our hitting's going to be fine. For one thing, if especially if Vientos does what we expect him to do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to be honest, I agree with everything you just said, from Vogelback to Vientos, to the pitching. Even, I mean, Vogelback. To start off with that, yeah, man, it seems like he's all singles or walks, and anytime he gets on base, he's just clogging up the base paths because, like you said, then they have to pinch run for him, and he just doesn't seem worth it. I mean, look, I feel like I want to like the guy, and when you look at him, you say to yourself, "Oh, that's a power bat. That's a guy that's going to come in here and have an opportunity to hit 20 or 30 home runs." And he is not that at all. We've seen the one home run he hit that he didn't even pull, too. It was an opposite field home run in Dodger Stadium. I don't know where he's got no pull power. It's very surprising. He's a perplexing player. And once again, you feel like you want to like him, but he's just he's not the type of bat that the Mets need in this starting lineup right now. Like, I wouldn't mind Vogelback coming off the bench. That's a guy that could get on base late in the game and then you pinch run for him or whatever. But I don't know. I just don't like him as a guy to be relied upon on an everyday aspect. And when you're the everyday DH against righties, which he is, you're pretty much going to play every day. And also Tommy Pham too. I haven't been happy with Tommy Pham. I mean, I guess he's at a small sample size too, but he hasn't exactly hit the crap out of the ball yet either. To look at Vientos too, one thing, did you think that it was curious that they ended up bringing up Vientos, but the guy they sent down was Luis Guillorme? I was very surprised by that. How about you?
Yeah, I figured Tommy Pham was going to be demoted, but I guess it kind of happens as a overcrowding. I guess someone was gonna be brought back. They're gonna be brought to AAA, and unfortunately, it was Diorme. But
Yeah,
I feel like it'll be good hands. Plus, that Diorme will probably be back up because the depth we need, probably the depth on the bench we need. So I think that one will work out fine. I also feel going forward, maybe there should be a sort of I guess a DH platoon. Maybe like have a Beatty DH on the days that Vientos is at third. I feel should be an option to go to. Also, another
hmm
option they could go to with Vientos, they could have him split time between DH and first base. On days maybe they want to give Alonso a rest and have him DH. Vientos
Oh
could
yeah,
be at first base.
yeah, I
And I
agree.
feel
That's it. Yeah.
and Escobar, I think maybe should be primarily on the bench.
Yeah, to be honest, and I like Escobar. I know he's a good guy. I met Escobar in spring training. He could not have been a nicer guy. So this isn't coming out of me not liking him. But to be honest, I think that Luis Guillorme is a much more valuable player on this team than Eduardo Escobar. And I hate to use this word, but it seems very Wilponian to me, if that's a word that I can just make right now, like a Wilpon-esque to me, of the Mets to be keeping Eduardo Escobar on the team right now, despite his awful performance at the plate. The guy hasn't been good at all this year from an offensive perspective, which is the only reason he's here and making that money. He's been terrible at the plate this year, but instead you send down Luis Guillorme, who's one of the guys on your team that plays the game the right way. He runs the bases well. He plays great defensively. He's a guy that you developed and brought up and has been one of your longest tenured veteran bench players. And you're going to send him down and keep Eduardo Escobar? I don't really understand that. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, as the word in the word Chip Chipper said, that don't make no sense.
Yes. Yes, you're right. Well said. Well said, my friend. And yeah, so just talking about a couple of the other guys too. So we're mentioning Vientos, who came up late last year, and kind of struggled. He kind of struggled. Beatty had a couple of moments, but Vientos struggled. So it'll be nice to see him getting a shot at the big league level so quickly again. Only 6 weeks or so into this season right now. And remember, Vientos had 13 or 14 home runs in the minor leagues already. So in AAA, he was on pace to hit 46 home runs this year, which would have been an international league record, which is crazy to think about too. So, Vientos has had a historic beginning to this season. Um, you know, Other than that, Dan, looking at the guys they've already brought up, like Beatty, how do you like that he's performed so far this season since coming up?
I feel Beatty is slowly getting there. I just feel like they need to get him in the lineup as much as possible because that is the only way he's going to be the player we expect him to eventually. Is if we keep him in the lineup as much as possible. Also, the same thing that, of course, with Alvarez
Yep.
needs to be
I was just
getting
going to
as
ask you
easy
about
as
him.
possible. Of course, obviously there'll be a couple of off days. We know how that usually is with catchers. Unfortunately, I used to hear about that back all the time back in the days with Mike Piazza was on the team, and
Hmm.
people would get upset sometimes. There were people who mostly only got to get to the ballpark on Sundays, and they used to be upset when Mike Piazza wasn't in the lineup. I heard good stories of people writing complaint letters to Bobby Valentine apparently because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because
So,
Valentine never liked to play him in a day game after a night game.
yeah, so there'd be some Mets fans that really mostly went on Sunday home games, got upset they didn't get to see the best player in the team, unfortunately. And let's face it, that you would expect it to happen, but unfortunately, it was a circumstance where one of the best players on the team was happened to be a catcher, so they had to. It was gonna happen, and he was gonna need to get an off day at least once or twice a week,
Yeah,
and
it's true, man.
that's what we're gonna have with the Vientos. We're probably gonna be seeing Sanchez as a backup, as Vientos' backup sometime down the line. At this
I
point.
really hope. I don't mind that the Mets signed Gary Sanchez, and if you're a Mets fan and you don't know that they signed Gary Sanchez, the former Yankee prospect and former Yankee big leaguer and former Minnesota Twin, yeah, the Mets did sign him. And to be honest, look, I got nothing against Gary Sanchez. I just really hope that we don't see him at the major league level this year because Gary Sanchez is just not a good player anymore. Gary Sanchez cannot hit, and he's a decent thrower behind the plate, but Gary Sanchez is also not a good defensive catcher. So I feel like, especially with the Mets rotation, having Gary Sanchez here would just not be a good move. So I don't mind them taking a shot on him. Maybe he could straighten things out in the minor leagues and they can bring him back up as maybe a part-time catcher DH type thing. But I really don't want to see him catching at the major league level this year. That would be a little scary to me. But to get back with you, what you were saying about Alvarez and everything, I totally agree. He has to be playing every single day. I don't care if you're facing a tough pitcher. Same thing with Beatty. I don't care if you're facing a tough left-handed pitcher. He's going to have to eventually hit left-handed pitching, right? So might as well let him start now. And right now, who else do the Mets have to roll out there? It's not like uh, Omir Santos got hurt, so you're stuck in a position right now where Francisco Alvarez has to play. Eduardo Escobar has not hit for crap this year. So you're stuck in a situation where Brett Beatty has to play. It might not be the situation you want to be in, but this is the reality, right, Dan? So let the
Yeah,
kids play and let's find out what we got.
yeah, exactly. Plus, I'll use an example of a team that successfully pulled this off with some young prospects. If you recall, 2003, the Miami then Florida Marlins, they brought up a lot of young prospects, including a young Miguel Cabrera, and they even brought
Yep.
up a pitch. They even took a big chance on a pitcher that kind of flew under the radar by the name of Dontrell Willis, along with some other players that kind of flew under the radar. They
That's a
ended
good
up
point.
they pulled off one of the biggest upsets. Like, people thought the World Series was going to be just handed to the 2003 Yankees. They
Yeah.
beat them in 6 games.
Josh Beckett throwing that complete game to finish off the Yankees in Game 6. You're absolutely right.
I feel like this is a real possibility. You might end up making letting these kids play might be the move that turn that or whole season around and not realize it.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, sometimes
Another,
that's what you have to do.
another good example, I feel like gets overlooked. I mean, you look at the 2015 Mets of 4-3. We didn't win the whole thing. We didn't win. 4-3. We lost the World Series to Kansas City. But the way we got to that point, yeah, a lot of people look back at the 2015 Mets. They'll bring up Yoenis Cespedes and that magical run he had after he was traded to the Mets, and of course the pitching. But people forget one of the players we called up a player by the name of Michael Conforto. The
Yep.
guy, we took a chance with this guy. He ended up going from the year before was playing in, well, then the Cyclones were a low A. Next, he moved up very quickly in high ball double A to the big leagues. The guy ended up getting a 2 home run game in game 4 of the World Series.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
pays
exactly.
to take a chance sometimes on these prospects.
That Game 4 of the World Series, by the way, me and you were sitting on the couch at Anthony's house during the Halloween party, watching the Mets blow that game. A scene that
Yep,
I'll never forget.
yep, exactly. And Anthony, the first time Anthony really got to see what I'm like. Unfortunately, he didn't get to see what I would have liked him to have seen what I'm like after a Mets win, but he got a taste of what I'm like watching a Met game.
Exactly. And let's just say that after the Mets lost that game, me and you started drinking a hell of a lot harder.
Yeah, exactly. Believe me, Anthony. Believe me, if you remember, anyone who remembers the compound, Anthony was it was well stocked. Let's put it this way.
Yeah,
Compound was well stocked with the team. So trust me,
exactly.
it was one. And I can tell you, still, I have a feeling eventually, in some form, might not be in person, but I'll kind of make sure that he'll get to know what I'm like when the Mets. Hopefully, get to know what it's like when the Mets win a World Series, and I hope it happens that while Anthony's on this earth, he gets to know what it's like when the Mets win a World Series. Because I have a major plan to call in the day after. I'm going to call in the day after, and I told him, do not be surprised if I'm crying harder than Mike Smith after that retirement. I told him.
I've got two bad knees, and I just saw the
Yeah,
Mets win the World Series.
well, I don't know about the bad knee part, even though I think it's just a sub, but I might.
Oh, that was the Mike Schmidt
Just in
reference.
But I might. Yeah, of course, the Mike Smith reference, but I might say, I came to Flushing, New York, with the hope of seeing the Mets win a World Series. And that dream came true. Might be something on the line. Might be something on the line to that.
Exactly. And we might have to make a video of that one day. So,
Well, for my sake, I hope you're around the day I see it happen. I really hope you're around because I can tell you, you will see. You might have never seen. You will never if it when it finally happens. You will never see two grown men hug as hard as you'll have ever seen when it happens.
tears will be flowing that day, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. And a little bit of warning: if I ever, hopefully by then I'll have a driver's license. If you have the car keys anywhere, be warning. I'll be doing burn. I might be tempted to do burnouts in front of the house.
I'll let you do it. I'll let you take that. You can absolutely do it. and then we could go around and hit Donovan's and grab a victory burger.
Yep, exactly. The post parade victory burger.
Exactly, brother. You know it. See, we already got the whole plan laid out, ladies and gentlemen. There's not going to be any messing around the day the Mets finally win the World Series.
And of
And
course you can't forget getting up when that happens, getting up really early in the morning because we would have to get up really early in the morning to have that good spot for the parade.
oh yeah, and if it's the parade, if the parade is the day after the Mets win the World Series, like sometimes there's a day in between. If it's the day after, we will not be sleeping that night. We're gonna have to meet up with Stevie Lou and get some stuff to keep us up for a long ass time.
Yep, exactly. Some of that strong Dominican coffee.
Exactly, man. And yeah, you know, so I think I'm just about done here. We still got one last thing I did want to hit before we get out of here today, Dan. And last Thursday, the NFL, which is just so funny, man. These guys could put anything up there, and it'll get 20 million people watching it, like they did last week with the NFL schedule release. Jets, Giants, both big time games. Week 1 right off the bat. Giants Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. Jets Monday Night Football against the Bills. What are your thoughts from the schedule, Dan? Is there anything for your Giants that really stands out to you so far?
Well, a couple of things. For one thing, right off the bat, week 1, you might see me getting the fights with Cowboy fans on social media, without a doubt. Also, our two teams cross paths, and like I said, me and Robert might have to start a Patreon to raise money so we could have tickets for that game. Um,
That is true. That is true.
Another thing I have to say about the schedule: Christmas Day, Giants Eagles Christmas Day. That's going to be a wild Christmas Day. Getting up, open. I forgot, is that game a day game or a night game? I believe it's a night game, right?
I think it's an 8 o'clock game. I think you're right.
Oh yeah, so that's pretty much going to be me opening up my Christmas presents. Probably I'll be opening up my Christmas presents. Maybe some Christmas dinner. Probably making all phone calls, wishing everyone Merry Christmas, everyone I talk to on Christmas Day, and getting together in the living room, hopefully watching the Giants beat the Eagles, and probably getting into fights with Eagles fans on social media.
Yeah, man. Definitely a lot of highlights. The Giants have a bunch of primetime games this year too.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I do have to say one negative about the schedule. I hear there's one playoff game, and I hope that it doesn't work out in the situation where the Giants are playing that one playoff game that's on Peacock, because that'll really suck for fans that might not have access to that game. Whatever happened to the days where the NFL, if it was the hometown team, they made sure it was on broadcast TV one way or another. I remember them doing that, especially back in the early days. Remember, not many cable
Yep.
providers had NFL Network for a while. I remember, including the cable provider then they were called Time Warner. Now they're called Spectrum. But I remember back then Time Warner didn't have Spectrum yet. I mean, they didn't have NFL Network yet. So they made an effort to make sure the on some TV network. I think they put the game on. They simulcast the game on Channel 2, if I remember correctly, to make sure that Giants fans had access to that game. And that'll really suck. I feel bad for some of those Giant fans that if it works out that way, or whatever teams are playing in that playoff that Peacock game, they're gonna have to potentially go to a bar, and sometimes those bars are always a lot of fun during playoff games. I have to admit, joy to being there with a lot of fans when they win. But at the same time, not everyone's gonna want to stand up, because when bars are crowded, sometimes you can't find a seat. It's not. It's gonna be problem. So I also feel like there's going to be huge gatherings at houses, probably of fans of the two teams playing in that Peacock game
Yeah, you're
because of that.
probably right. And you
Oh,
know, I
oh,
I can't believe when did they announce that there was going to be a playoff game on Peacock this year? Because I haven't even heard that yet. That's so
I
crazy.
heard
I can't believe.
I saw this last weekend, and it's one of the
Wow.
it's during a wild card week. So
Mhm.
it's one of I just know all I know is that it's one playoff game during wild card week, and that's to be determined. And I I just feel bad for the fans of those two teams, especially if they don't have Peacock. I mean, I have to look. I happen to have Peacock, but not everyone does.
Mhm.
So that'll really suck if they need to find a way to have access to that game. And I feel the NFL should not put playoff games on streaming service. Those should always be available on TV via cable or regular networks. Some network you can get on a TV. They should have those playoff games to remain on.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
I totally agree, man.
it's a real big big mistake. I feel like.
Yeah, it definitely is. You're right. You know that alienates a lot of fans too. You know, like you mentioned, that don't have Peacock or a way to watch that. So that is
Yep.
stupid. I can't. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I don't have Amazon. I'm gonna have to find a way to watch. I think what the Giants are playing in one of the Amazon games that are on Amazon. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
the
go to
Jets
a
do.
bar to watch one of those games. So
It's true.
I'm probably gonna have to do that because I can't see myself. The only other option would be to just buy an Amazon subscription during football season and then cancel after football season. I could do that.
That's true.
Another option.
That's true.
I'm debating to do. I'm debating whether I'm going to do that when it's time to watch the Mets are doing the game on Apple TV. I'm debating on that, buying an Apple TV subscription and canceling at because unlike last year where the games on Apple TV were free, as long as you had an Apple device, you could get Apple TV for free automatically. Like I was relegated to watching those broadcasts on my phone with Apple TV games. I'm
Hmm.
gonna have to. I'm probably gonna have to get and if I choose to go in that direction to watch whatever amount of games, probably not going to be that many, but those games that are going to be broadcasted on Apple TV, I'm going to buy a subscription to Apple TV and cancel after the baseball season just to watch those games that are on Apple TV. And I hear that not next year, but the year after next, NASCAR their TV deal expires. I'm hoping against hope that Amazon isn't one of the networks that gets broadcast rights to some NASCAR races. Especially the fact I'm not good at finding any place that I could pirate NASCAR races. Thinking. So
Yeah, that
it's
would
like
be in a pain in the neck too if it goes on one of those crappy streaming services. Damn.
yeah, exactly. I would have to buy an Amazon subscription and cancel after NASCAR season. As long as they don't and I gotta hope they'll have like an archive that I could do something similar to DVR function because I love I'm able to DVR that.
That's true.
I won't have a problem because I do have Peacock. If NBC renews their deal for the second half of the season, and they put some of the races
Mhm.
on Peacock, since I have Peacock, that won't be a problem. If they do that, if they go in that direction, I understand it's not going to be their most marquee events like the Daytona 500 will remain on TV, and the very last race of the season will be on TV. But there might be some races, maybe somewhere in the middle of the summer, that will end up being streaming, could end up being streaming service exclusive during their next TV deal.
Very true. Very true, man. And yeah, you know, just Dan dropped out there for a second, but he'll be back in a second before we wrap up. But yeah, you know, just a couple of notes from the Jets schedule. I mean, obviously, we got here's Dan. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I just got knocked out.
No problem, no problem. I was just jumping real quick before we get out of here. I just wanted to touch real quick on a couple of the Jets games. I mean, obviously we got the great Giants game that we're going to be going to. The Jets, like we mentioned, are opening on Monday night. The Jets have 5 primetime games this year, which is the most that they've had in 10 years. And if you combine the last 3 years together, the Jets only had 4 primetime games as we lose Dan again. I'm sure he'll be back again in a second. But isn't that crazy that the amount of games this year is even more than for the last 3 years combined? So, it just goes to show, Dan, I was just mentioning too how the Jets have played 4 primetime games over the last 3 years, and this year they're going to be playing 5. So it's kind of a role reversal for the Jets. I'm not going to be seeing them at the usual 110 kickoff this year anymore.
Yep, exactly. This team has high expectations, and it'll be a disappointment if they don't win a Super Bowl within the window of Aaron Rodgers' contract.
It's true, man. And Eastside Dave mentioned that when he was on our show a couple weeks ago, which, by the way, once again, shout out to our boy Eastside Dave, who's killing it as always with the great Roy Harder on the Davey Mac Sports program. And obviously the vastly talented Bobby Tamburo. So love those guys over there. But yeah, Dan. But the one thing, just to touch real quick on, we were talking the Amazon games and the playoffs and everything. The one thing that we can be happy about, though, as Jet fan, Giant fan, is that we're not going to be stuck on those games because we're both going to have the number 1 seed, right?
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully we won't have to worry about that. Some other team's fan base will have to worry about their team being a playoff game on the streaming service.
Exactly.
And
Eagles and Chiefs, step out of the way. The Jets and the Giants are going to make it an all New York Super Bowl in Vegas this year.
yup, that would be something else. And if that happens, they need to do a mega Super Bowl weekend party. Like maybe 2 days before the Super Bowl. And that party, since there's a hotel in Las Vegas themed after New York, that would be the perfect place for that party.
Exactly, man. You're absolutely right about that.
And not only that, I might need to arm myself with information. What do you say, me and you, if that happens, we team up to try to win the Christopher Mad Dog Russo's Impossible Super Bowl contest?
Yes, we'll have to do that 1,000%.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that to somehow outsmart the marquee.
Oh my God. Well, we got plenty of time to plan that out, my friend. And I think we're just about done for today now. Dan, before we get out of here, do you have anything that you'd like to plug for yourself?
Sure, my Twitter, Bobo103NYC on Twitter, Daniel Curlin on YouTube. You can see all your Bobo YouTube content, and of course, Bobo718DK on Instagram for all your Instagram content related to me is on there. And plus you can see me here, and plus some appearances on an Eastside Day on a Davey Mac Sports program. I might be one of the guests on this week's show.
Very cool, very cool. So keep your eye out for our co-host right here, Bobo, Daniel Bobo Curlin, on the great Davey Mac Sports program. As always, keep your eyes open for that. We'll be retweeting and everything like that too if any thing is put out on social media. So keep it locked on there. And if you want to follow us there and you haven't yet, make sure to check us out at BSith_podcast. You can check me out there at my last name, Cramer NY. And you can head on over to our Instagram at Best Seat in the House Podcast. Don't forget, if you're watching this video, if you're listening to it, you can download these podcasts anywhere you find podcasts. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get them, they will be. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe if you haven't already and give us a like to our video. We really, really appreciate it. Once again, thank you everybody for tuning in and supporting our podcast like always. I'm Rob Cramer. This is my co-host, Daniel Bobo Carlin. And we'll catch you next week, everybody. This is For the Best Seat in the House podcast.
Push the button, Frank.
Let's fucking go Mets.